Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world.
Welcome to episode 35 of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm Chris Hill with my co-host Sean Winter. Today on the show, we have the privilege of chatting with celebrity chef, restaurateur, and if you've ever watched Food Network's Chopped, you've almost certainly seen him as one of the recurring judges, Scott Conant. But before we jump into the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
That's right. If you want to pursue a career in the food industry, Le Cordon Bleu is the largest network of culinary and hospitality schools with more than 35 institutes in 20 countries around the world. Le Cordon Bleu not only offers you one of the most respected culinary qualifications in the industry, it also gives you a once-in-a-lifetime multicultural experience. Be a part of a 120-year legacy. Join them for a lifelong journey on your pathway to culinary mastery. Apply at cordonbleu.edu. And with that, Chris, I'm definitely excited to talk to Scott. As you said, he's been on the show so many times. I think he's the longest, if not one of the longest standing judges. And I feel like I kind of know him. It's, you know, when you have somebody that you've seen that many times, you feel like you kind of know him. And I'm in doing research and kind of looking at some of the other interviews and things of that nature for this podcast, I actually saw where someone went up to them and kind of said like, hey, in so many words, I'm not going to curse, but stop being such a jerk, you know? And to his point, he said to the guy, you know, you see me for like an edited version of the show and you're trying to put judgment on me at that. I think it's kind of an interesting world to be in.
Yeah, I've actually came across the exact same research, a couple different stories. But, you know, I think Scott's a good guy. I'm looking forward to this conversation as well, Sean. A little bit of his background. Chef Scott Conant, his career spans over 30 years, which he's established himself as one of the country's top chefs and restaurateurs. As a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America, Conant broke out into the restaurant scene in his 20s, running famed Italian kitchens in New York City. However, he really put his name on the map in 2002 when he opened L'Impero, which garnered 3 stars from the New York Times and won him a James Beard Award for Best New Restaurant. This early success led to Conant being named one of America's best new chefs in 2004. Conant now has restaurants in New York, LA, Las Vegas, and Phoenix, with at least 2 new restaurants that will be opening up in the early part of 2018. In addition to his time spent at his various restaurants across the country, Conant is a resident judge on Food Network's most successful show, Chopped, and has published 3 cookbooks. Sean, what do you say we hop in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey there, Chef Scott Conant. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I know you, like a lot of us, started out as a youngster, you know, washing dishes. Maybe you can give a little bit of a background to your career for the audience so they can kind of catch up.
Well, yeah, started as a 15-year-old kid. I'm from a town called Oakville in Connecticut. The biggest town next to me is a town called Waterbury. And I had a family friend who owned a restaurant. And I just asked them if I could get a job if they needed somebody. They did. And I started working. And very quickly, washing dishes, started prepping, and then working as a fry cook and breading clam strips and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Nice. Now, Scott, what was your ambition starting out for your career? Did you have a particular something in mind relating to this industry or relating to even what you're doing now? What was the ambition starting out, and how have they kind of morphed or changed through time now?
Oh my God, it morphs all the time. I mean, when I first started, my goal was I wanted to buy a car. You know, humble beginnings. It didn't even have to be a nice car. I just wanted a car. So I was 15. I wanted to save money for it. And I honestly, really, I have to tell you, I played a lot of baseball as a kid. And so that sense of teamwork was instilled in me. And very quickly, working inside a restaurant, I identified that same sense of team. And I really loved it. So it morphed from there. As I identified the sense of team, I tried to do better. I tried to just every place I went to work, I just wanted to be the best cook in the kitchen. And I moved up relatively quickly, considering. Then I went to CIA, and then I went to Europe, and I came back to New York City, and I just worked hard to try to evolve. The benefit all these years later, I mean, that was 32 years ago. The benefit now is that the idea of food has changed completely. And it wasn't like that when I first started in the mid 80s. Now, it's a food culture, which is completely different than it was then, even though there was food appreciation, but not a culture of food, I would say. So as it's evolved, I could do a lot of different things under the guise of food, right? So whether it be TV shows or a podcast like this with you guys, or working in restaurants and cooking with the team, but food is my life, and I talk about it all the time.
So Scott, when you went off to CIA, I know you come from an Italian background. I speak a little bit of Italian myself. Your grandmother cooked the home cooked meals for you, so you had that kind of ingrained in you. Did you know? I know out of school you then went off to run some Italian kitchens as well up in New York. Did you kind of know that's where you wanted your career to go, down that path?
No. I wanted to cook fancy French food, man. I thought that's where it was at. Take into consideration, as I was working in these restaurants, there wasn't the access and insight that you have today. There was no internet. Right. There was no Food Network. So my idea of fancy French restaurants was strictly of the things that I had seen pictures of, or TV shows of, very limited. The Great Chefs of Europe and stuff like that. I think that was a show on at the time. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, I thought fancy food, man. That was the key. That's what I thought. I didn't realize that there were elevated versions of Italian food. The Italian food that I ate wasn't necessarily what I wanted to cook at all. Yeah, that came later.
So Scott, as the career was going on, what would you say was one of the toughest periods or points in your career that you had to endure thus far, and how did you get through that potentially dark period, if you will, to pull yourself out?
There's too many to name. There really isn't. I mean, I feel like, as I said, I was always good at what I did, right? The idea of cooking good food was never an issue for me. It was the other stuff that I wasn't prepared for. The business arrangements and partnerships and things that worked or didn't work, or, egos, whether they be mine or somebody else's. It was, a lot of humility, a lot of humbling moments, and a ton of resets, pressing reset, starting over. I would say, the path to success is very, very difficult. I think adhering to the vision is really hard to do. And sometimes it requires a step back to take 5 steps forward. And you don't realize at the time when that starts, you're taking a step backwards. It's hard to trust that it's the right thing to do. And in order to press reset and move it forward, it requires a lot of faith in yourself, faith in your team, and just, overall faith in the universe, so to speak.
When you stepped out for the first time with L'Impero, you got a lot of great press. You won some awards. What was that like? You kind of went into the limelight, it seemed like, from overnight. What was that like, and did you have any kind of gut check moments?
I had already been working in the city. I think that was 2002 when we opened the Impero. So I'd already been working in the city for 12 years. So, the seeming success, overnight success. Success is a weird thing, right? I mean, there's more of a perception of other people of your success as opposed to how you feel about your own success, right? I think that I've had successful moments, but I don't consider myself successful, right? I think I've had a few really good things happen. I've been very fortunate, but I don't consider myself successful. Successful for me is identifying as a successful person. I think for me, and my own definition of that would mean that I'm close to the end. I got a lot of things I want to do. I still feel, even though it's been 32 years, I still feel like the underdog.
Gotcha.
I've had a lot of therapy about this, by the
way. So you haven't always been this mature?
Is that maturity? I mean, I think I'm just showing you my my vulnerabilities. That's the way I think.
No, that's great. I love it.
I love it. So now, Scott, one thing that a lot of our audience and just individuals that are out there are trying to do is kind of stand out, if you will, or build a personal brand or get themselves noticed. Now, for you, was it a conscious decision to start building a quote unquote personal brand, or was this just something that was really organic from you just striving to be the best and pushing throughout your time?
I just wanted to do things that felt good for me. I just want, and I continue to just do things that I think are an extension of myself. And I think if you have a solid core and a solid foundation and a good sense of right and wrong, whatever successes you achieve or whatever failures you endure, I think that good sense of, that moral compass, that personal integrity, so to speak, that you apply towards your vocation will get you through those difficult times. Because failures are inevitable. Nobody has 100% success rate, right? Even I'm a Yankees fan, but even Ted Williams didn't hit 1,000. It just doesn't. It didn't happen. Look at Aaron Judge, right? The guy wins Rookie of the Year last year. He had more strikeouts in a row than he broke a record, right? I mean, it's you in order to deal with the positives, you have to deal with the negatives.
Yeah, and hopefully learn from him.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't learn from them, then that's the true sense of failure. That's the true sense of failure. We've all dealt with people in our lives who are so wildly talented that don't know how to deal with the failures, and that's where true failure lies.
Do you think that's one of the big things holding folks back when they're stepping out on their own for the first time, is they keep making the same mistakes without correcting them?
Well, I think there's attitude. I think it boils down to attitude, right? Always. We do Chopped. It's a great show. We've had tremendous amount of success with that show. It's been on for almost 10 years now. We got a lot of young chefs who come in and they have this sense of, you don't understand me. And I remember being like that. I remember having that attitude. It's only a change in that attitude. It's only tweaking that chip on your shoulder. I think it's okay to have a little sass, right? It's okay. That's good. But I think all too often we have to keep it in check and be able to say to yourself, I'm good, I'm bad, this was right, this was wrong. If you constantly look at other people and think that they're wrong and you're right, I mean, I don't know if I could speak this way, but on your show, but if you constantly look at everybody else that they're the asshole, chances are you're the asshole. Right. Right or wrong.
Absolutely.
That's the way I think it, man. I mean, there's been times in my life where I really thought I was right, and it turned out I was the asshole. And it takes a hard look in the mirror to identify that within yourself.
And I think you're missing out on everyone else's experiences and knowledge that you could be using to apply to the business as well. Absolutely. There's so much to learn from other people's failures.
And now, Scott, you mentioned Chopped, and you're exposed to a variety of chefs, young chefs, middle of the road, all these different individuals that are coming in. You talked a little bit about the characteristic right there of not being able to maybe, in so many words, look at yourself in the mirror and take responsibility or accountability. But are there other characteristics or traits that you see that really differentiate the quote unquote winners from the ones that are fly by night, they got their 15 minutes of fame, or maybe quote losers, if you will? What really, in your eyes, really separates that out for people to understand?
Again, it's attitude, and it's not buying in perception of other people's successes, right? If I spent all my time pursuing the vision of someone else's success, I don't think you ever arrive. You'd never feel fulfilled or happy. That's not what it's all about. Success is a funny thing, right? I mean, we all have a different idea what success is. Some people think it's money. Other people think it's a happy family. Some people might think it's health. It depends on your own, as I said, that what motivates you, what's your own compass set at. But I'll tell you, I could look at other chefs within my genre and say, this guy's more successful than me, or this woman is more successful than me. I don't think that's the point. It's what am I happy with? What motivates me? What makes me happy? That's what I have to pursue, not society's belief of your own success.
I love this. I don't think the folks that are watching Chopped at home get a chance to see your this side of you very often.
No. I always say I'm the victim of a bad edit.
I love that. In looking at some of those, and Chris, I'll let you jump in a second with a question, but in looking at some of the interviews that you did, we saw where you said essentially there was a guy that came up to you and was rude to you, for just, I mean, and I couldn't imagine being in that position. Sometimes you just got to grit your teeth, but I mean, that's tough. That's tough.
Well, you see a snapshot, right? It was Malcolm Gladwell that called it thin slicing, right?
Yeah.
You only see the small perception of, and again, it's about perception. Nobody sees me at home when I'm sitting with my daughters and just spending that quiet time and the most loving period of my life. I don't expect people to look at that, right? But they also don't get to see it. You don't know. You don't. Eminem said it, right? You don't know me. you don't know me. Love it.
Well, Scott, you've got restaurants, in New York, LA, Phoenix, Las Vegas. I know you're opening up in about a week or so in Las Vegas.
I am.
In second location. First of all, is it intentional to be right after Valentine's Day and not deal with the madness of Valentine's Day?
The calendar, when you do these openings, you set the calendar and you don't look at holidays, right? You just look at, this is when I think we'll be ready. So we're gonna figure it out, man. It's stuff ain't easy. This stuff is not easy sometimes.
Well, that's where I was going with it. Can you talk for a bit maybe about how you've gone about scaling your brand and businesses?
Well, first of all, it's very difficult to get out of your own way sometimes, and that's what I feel like I have to do. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to surround myself with great people. My team is solid, and what I love about them is, even though I don't want to hear bad news, they have to tell me the bad news, right? I don't want to hear good news. I don't care about the good. I want to fix the bad. So I also come at it from a place where the most important aspect of what we do in a restaurant has to be service. Service is first. Food is a follow-up to the service experience. It doesn't mean that food isn't important, or it's not the most important. It's most important to whoever needs to swim in the food lane. That's the most important thing for them, right? Everybody play their position. If everybody plays their position and does the absolute best that they can do within the confines of that position, then we're going to be fine. But if the second baseman wants to worry about the shortstop, not to use another baseball analogy, but if the second baseman wants to worry about the shortstop, then the second baseman isn't going to be doing his or her job to the best of their ability. So I think it's really important that we set those guidelines really in the beginning, set a culture of goodness where we pursue goodness. That's what I tell my team all the time. We pursue goodness. What do we do for a living? We pursue goodness. We make people happy. Why do we do what we do? We do it because we make people happy. This is not to sound like a selfless, clearly this isn't a selfless act, right? I always say, for my own selfish reasons, I do what I do because it makes me happy, right? That's why I do this. Making people happy makes me happy. So it's a selfish act.
I assume that you have folks in each of the locations that you really trust to make good decisions and empower them.
People need to be empowered. And I always say, I don't want, paralysis by overanalysis. I don't want everybody to sit around. You need to make a decision. We're going to make wrong decisions, right? But we're going to err on the side of generosity when those decisions are made. We need to think bigger than just the dollars and cents that are coming into an individual restaurant.
Love that. Now, I'm curious, what do you look for when you are looking to bring someone on board, a potential new hire, how do you look at either what questions are you asking them, or what are you really looking for to ensure that you're getting some of the best people that you're going to entrust your business with, essentially?
I'm the worst interviewer ever. I really am. I mean, I admit that, and I tell that to my team. Don't let me interview people, because I'm gonna sit down and talk to them, and we'll talk about all kinds of like fun stuff. I have an HR person who gave me a list of questions that I need to ask in an interview, and I just don't have the patience for it. I mean, I realize that these are necessary things inside running a business, but I'd rather get a feel for the individual. I'd rather see if this is someone that I can trust. I care less about someone's resume, and I care more about how they've endured life. What's their perception of customers who come in? What motivates them, right? If somebody says to me, I want to make sure that I get the highest check average out of somebody, that's for me is a telltale sign that this may not be the person that I want running my businesses. But if somebody says to me, I'm not after the money, I'm after the relationship, because I'd rather somebody sit down and hit singles and doubles all day long than get up and hit one home run. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think that we're ultimately in the relationship business, and the relationship that we form with our team, the relationship that you form with your customer base, and that's more important than identifying the person with the best resume who's gonna, I think that you can mold these people into getting the best business possible. The best business possible isn't always, for me, the most profitable business, right? It's also identifying the happiness within that team, that, a couple points here and there aren't going to make the difference in your own personal happiness. So I'd rather pursue happy cooks that cook happy food, happy servers that serve happy guests.
And I'm pretty sure there's some sort of correlation between that perfectly, put together resume and the answers that someone gives, thinking they know what we want to hear, but in reality, they're just kind of BSing us.
We've all dealt with that, right? Here's the person who tells you all the things that they think you want to hear, and you walk away and you just kind of feel dirty after talking to them. Like I feel like I got to take a shower after speaking to that person. Like it's not authentic. It's not sincere. I'll take sincerity and authenticity over the right answer any day of the week. I'll hire goodness. I'll hire goodness over that resume any day of the week, because I could teach the person with that inherent sense of goodness what we need, as opposed to the person who thinks they already know. You can't teach that person anything.
Love it. And Scott, just a side note, I in interviewing someone one time, they had said, I asked them what they do in their free time just to get a sense what they do outside of work, if you will. They said they're into reading. And I said, what type of books? They said, leadership books. And I said, okay, so which one are you reading now? And they go, oh, I've got it right on my nightstand. And I said, well, what are you reading? And they're like, they couldn't answer.
Interesting.
Yeah, talk about needing a shower after all of the BS I went through from that entire interview. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Well, kind of along the same lines, with authenticity and being honest. I think a lot of the younger folks that are going to culinary school or just maybe going straight into the industry are attracted to the top chefs and the chops and Gordon Ramsay, and they think that, I can just go to culinary school, get out, I'll have my own show and I'll be set. In reality, I think we all know that it's much bigger of a roller coaster, ups and downs and challenges. What would you tell people, maybe going to culinary school right now, the kind of mindset they need to be successful long term in the industry? That is such a great question. It's such a difficult question to answer, because there's so many things that you need to figure out in order to you got to walk your path, right? And walking that path is it takes a long time to know if you're even on the right path. You just don't know, right? You just go through the thing. Okay, I need to work for this guy, or I need to work for that woman. I need to spend time with them in order to be like them. And
I was fortunate that early in my career, personally, I knew I didn't want to be a disciple of anybody else. I wanted to kind of walk my own path. And maybe it was a little bit of my own arrogance and definitely a lot of ignorance. But basically, I feel like I did exactly that, right? It took me a long time to get there. At least it felt like a long time. It took a lot of hard work and a lot of being hit on the head. But in hindsight, I realized that it was necessary for me to go through that. I needed to be humbled. I needed to be humiliated a lot of times. I needed to feel like I was, I needed to be stolen from. I needed my ideas to be ripped off. You know what I mean? Like I needed the culmination of my career to be questioned all the time in order for me to kind of move forward and persevere, so to speak. It's not easy. So to anybody who's just starting this, I would say, if you think it's an easy path, then maybe you should rethink what you're doing. If you think that you're better than everybody else, maybe you should choose a new career, because what you're leading with at that point are your own insecurities. You're not leading with confidence. So you need to be, everybody needs to be humbled in their own way. Everybody needs to realize that, you know what, you're not as important to this particular concept as you think you are. And that's really humbling. I've left my own restaurants at different periods of my life, and those things have been going on without me. And that was really confusing for me, quite frankly, at different points in my career, because I thought, well, how does that go on without me? I created it, but things go on, right? Life goes on. It's what it is. Yeah. And that's hard for young cooks to understand. And also young cooks always think, well, that's your story, it's not mine. But everybody deals with their own version of that story.
So Scott, changing gears a little bit and kind of to progress it, because we were just talking about maybe the younger generation, but for those individuals that have a foothold right now, and maybe they do have a little bit of a brand built, maybe they are getting opportunities, maybe can you talk about how, when you're approached with either business ventures, business opportunities, how do you evaluate those before you either accept or decline?
It's so funny that you asked that. I was on the phone last night with Lucky Lee, who owns a company called Lucky's Tomatoes. And I've been buying tomatoes from Lucky since 1996. And Lucky said to me really early in the game, when I was a young chef, 25, 26 years old. And I was talking to her about stuff. And she said, Scott, I got to the point in my life where I decided I'm only going to do business with the people that I want to do business with. And if I get a hard time from somebody, I don't do business with them. I'd rather have an easy life than chase people around for money and have it be difficult. And I really, at the time, I thought, wow, that's so short-sighted. I'm not going to be like that. I'm just going to do deals and I'm going to make money. And it doesn't matter because I get along with everybody. And I do, for the most part, get along with everybody. But you also realize that you're not going to get along with everybody all the time. And signing the right deal with the right people and creating the right partnership. And I use the term in quotes because a partnership, you see a lot of partisanship in the world today, right? And I don't want to get into politics, but you see a lot of partisanship. Everybody's walking their own path and they refuse to listen to other people. But a true partnership, you really have to, put yourself and your ego in the back seat and do what's right for the brand and right for what you're creating. Do what's right for the overall goals, and take into consideration not just the customers, but also what's right for your team, for your staff, for your investors and all that stuff. But ultimately, it's about the customer. Ultimately, it's about what's going to make the customer happy. And I think you have to pursue those things, because if you think a little smaller, I think you achieve a lot more, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think responsibilities are interesting and challenging at times, because, if it goes well, if it goes poorly, it's my responsibility. It's my fault. And I need to own that, right? But if it goes well, it's not my fault. It's really the efforts of the team. So just like I'll never have one individual kind of blow up a deal, so to speak, for me, it's no one person's effort that's going to make something work, right? So I think it's important to point out part of being the guy, so to speak, the quote unquote guy. I have to keep in mind all the time that it's not me cooking in these restaurants all the time. These people are adhering it to a vision and they're moving it forward. And then, nobody lasts forever. Team members move on. But while they're with me, my intention is to be able to get them to a place where they're better having worked with me than if they hadn't.
Is this type of mentality that you have now, is this something that you grasped back when you were 20, 22, 25?
No. I mean, like I said, I've gotten the shit kicked out of me at a lot of different points in my life. And I feel like, what I try to provide for people is something that I never received, right? Which is all I expect in return is a little bit of respect and a little bit of loyalty, right? I mean, I have, people don't understand what it takes to be entrepreneurial. And I think of myself as a cook and an entrepreneur before I'm anything else. And, when people talk about what it takes, I've had to sell my car to meet payroll. I've had to cash in life insurance policies to meet payroll. I don't expect people to understand that, but I expect them to respect it, because there were times in my career where, I wouldn't get paid for months on end. And I had a roommate at the time. I'll never forget it. I was working at one place downtown and I didn't get paid for months. And my roommate every month he would give me his rent check. And I would go to the bank and I would cash it. And then I would pay my staff out of that check because it was the only way that I could cook what I wanted to cook. So I didn't do it because I'm a nice guy. Again, I did it for selfish reasons. I needed my team there. I love doing what I do. And I want to make sure that they're happy so that I could just do what I love.
Love that. That is truly the essence of what we try to teach people and for people to understand is that, they may see you and see that tip of the iceberg and they don't see the blood, sweat, tears, the times where it almost failed, the, worrying about how you're going to be able to make payroll, all those different things. I love that, Scott.
That's a reality,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think also folks, see, Zakarian on Chopped and other judges who don't have restaurants all over the country where you're, still busting your tail, trying to, make it work. And there's obviously a lot of balls in the air that you're having to make happen.
Yeah. Listen, Zakarian does actually have restaurants all over the country, but I mean, there's some people who don't choose that path. Right. And I don't begrudge them. Alex Guarnaschelli always says, and I love this, right? She says, I have one restaurant, but my goal is to get to zero. And I totally respect that because there's days where I say, I have the best job in the world. I am so fortunate to be able to do what I do. And then there's other days where I say, God, there's got to be an easier way to make a living. There's got to be an easier way.
That's funny. I love that. So now question. So kind of as we were sticking on the business evaluation and things, what are some of the things that you're looking at that you have your eye on? I mean, unless it is going down to zero, but what are some of the business ventures or opportunities that you're looking at right now in the future that you have your eye on from an entrepreneurial standpoint that you may start dipping your toe in? Maybe if it's not restaurants or if it is restaurants, maybe something outside of that.
Well, I think there's some fun things that I'm working on a product line. I think, as I look back at the amount of press that I've gotten on on the tomato sauce that I make, this recipe has changed and tweaked over the years. I feel like it's never been better than what it currently is. But, there's no reason why I'm not selling that retail to be able to for people to experience it at home. So that's something I'm taking down the road a little bit of. I'm also looking at some wine, partner with some vineyards in Italy and be able to do my own wine label with my daughter's name on them to be able to, because I think that I could sell those wines in the restaurants and be able to have people experience some of my favorite flavor profiles that come out of a wine bottle. but also I'm working on restaurants, and Chop just got picked up for another 2 or 3 seasons. I think I can't remember how many. So I'm always doing that. And I mean, the list goes on and on. It's honestly too much to tell you, because you'll say to me, Scott, you're full of it. Like, there's no way that you could do all this stuff. I just started to put another cookbook together. I 6 restaurants that I'm working on in different markets in 5 different cities. So I like all kinds of stuff that I'm doing. Long-term goal. I want to sit on a boat and fish 11 months of the year. That's my goal.
Nice.
For you, does it help keep you fresh to have the different types of work that aren't actually all the same thing?
I will tell you this. I feel blessed throughout all this stuff. I mean, I've had my ups and downs. I've had a lot of downs, more than what you would think, as I told you. But I never thought that I'd have the opportunities that are in front of me right now. And I feel really fortunate to be able to identify that and pursue them, honestly. I mean, a couple of years ago, I didn't think I would have this opportunity. And now that they're in front of me, I can't tell you how fortunate I feel and how much gratitude I have because of it.
Love it.
That's awesome.
The last one for me, and then Chris, I'll let you take it. But with an audience that some of them have an idea, let's say, that they want to launch, whether it's a restaurant or concept or something, and then another part of the audience already has something, and maybe they're going through a tough time or they're trying to scale. So for these, quote, food entrepreneurs, what would be some of your last advice, points, thoughts that you would share with them, essentially?
Oh, man, I think it being undercapitalized is one of the biggest challenges. And I think if you've ever gone through it, you know how hard it is, because it takes a toll on everything. So on every part, in every aspect of your life. So before you launch, I know that our egos get in the way sometimes. Before you launch, make sure you're properly financed, because it's so hard to do it without it, number one. And again, I've made this mistake. So it's only coming from a good place. Also, I'm not saying to listen to everybody who gives you advice, but you really got to pick and choose as to what you're going to pay attention to, because there's a lot of negative people out there that don't want to see you succeed, no matter how much they love you, right? And trying to persevere beyond those searing words can be really confusing and hurtful sometimes. And your belief in yourself has to be the motivating factor. But also, I think the purity of those actions, right? You really have to be pure with your intention. And it can't be about accolades, and it can't be about anything else. It's really got to be about the purity of your actions, honestly. I mean, I really, truly believe that if you don't believe in it in your heart of hearts, it's not about standing on stage. It's not about accepting beard awards. It's not about getting best new chef. It's not about any of that stuff. It's not even about your bottom line. It's about the purity of your ambition. That's it. I think you have to pursue that.
I assume for you, in the more challenging times, you knew that there'd be a light at the end of the tunnel. You just weren't quite sure where that was, right?
Listen, I'm still working on it, man. There's nothing I love more than spending time with my daughters, listening to them tell me stories, and I work more than I ever have. I'm on a plane 3-4 times a week. I'm in different cities, sometimes 2-3 cities a week. I'm always going. I'm always hustling, and it takes me away from what I love most, which is that moment between the two things that I love more than life itself. So again, if I didn't love what I did, I wouldn't do this. But on the other side of the coin, there's some sacrifices that are there, and I try to keep it all in check.
Well, Scott, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and share this incredible advice.
I really appreciate you guys thinking of me. Honestly, thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Keep doing great work out there.
I'll talk to you soon, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So that was our conversation with Chef Scott Conant. Sean, what were your takeaways?
It was such a fun conversation with him. I'll tell you that. I think number one was, it really took me back that he said he doesn't feel like he's a success. With someone of his stature and all the things that he's done and the things that he's got his hands into, for him to say he doesn't feel like a success, number one, and number two, says he feels like he's behind the curve. That was wild to hear Scott Conant, of all people, say that. And I think what he talked about in relation to that is that everybody has their own definition of success. And the reason why he doesn't feel like a quote unquote success is because his definition of success is that you're near the end of something and he has more things that he wants to do. So that's why it's wild to me, because that's not my definition of success. I define it a little bit different than that. So that's why it kind of took me back to hear him say that, but I can see where that completely makes sense to him. But the big takeaway is that everyone has their own definition of success, and I think it's very important for people to dial in what their own definition of success is, so they're just not chasing other people. That's number one. Number two, I liked how he joked about him being a bad hirer, essentially. How he just chit-chats and has a conversation with a person. But I think it's a testament to him knowing his strengths, knowing his weaknesses, and then empowering his team to do the things that he hired them to do, essentially. I think that's so critical for someone that wants to eventually become successful in their own right, is that they have to empower other people and they can't just do everything by themselves. So those two things really stood out to me. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, and just it was great. It was great. I had a lot of fun chatting with him. It was cool to see, the different side of Scott Conant. As he kind of mentioned in our conversation, he says that he's the victim of a bad edit. We only see this kind of hard-ass Scott Conant, where in reality, he has this time with his family and his daughters, and there's a lot softer side, which it was cool to kind of experience that with him. Along the same lines, I think he talks about a lot in the conversation about his team and having a culture of goodness and what that means. And if you're always kind of striving for goodness and creating goodness, whether it's with your staff, your employees, with the product itself, then everything else kind of takes care of itself. So just reminding the people around you, what can we do essentially good today? And then tied to that, I think, is the notion that even he said it himself, where he had to at certain points leave certain restaurants of his own. And he realized that, wow, like, I'm not that important. I'm not that special, and this thing can go on without me. And I think it's like, definitely is a way of humbling ourselves and reminding ourselves that we need the people around us to be successful. So very cool conversation. Y'all let us know what you think. You can find Scott on social media at Scott Conant pretty much everywhere. And we would love to hear your thoughts. With that, we'll leave you the final quote from Scott himself. If you think you're better than everybody else, maybe you should choose a new career, because what you're leading with at that point is your own insecurities. You're not leading with confidence. Everybody needs to be humbled in their own way. And with that, we're signing off.